Welcome to Daily Wisdom, Walking the Path with the Buddha, a podcast shared by David Roylance. This podcast is dedicated to guiding you to completely eliminate the discontent mind and the suffering it causes by attaining enlightenment. Learn and practice the teachings of Gautama Buddha that will guide you to fully attain a peaceful, calm, serene, and content mind with joy. To support this podcast, visit patreon.com/support Buddha or visit buddhadailywisdom.com, where you will discover a full range of courses, retreats, and online learning resources to assist you on the path to enlightenment. Now, here's our teacher to share more.
Sawadee Kap. Hello and welcome to Daily Wisdom, Walking the Path with the Buddha. Today is our group learning program, and I'm doing meditation with you guys to help you build up your loving kindness meditation practice. This is the third part of a 4-part series where I started off teaching loving kindness meditation, and then the other sessions I just do meditation with you and then open up to any and all questions that you guys might have. On the Sundays is when I cover a chapter in this book and I go chapter by chapter. In this Sunday we're going to be in chapter 3, which is titled Enlightenment. What is enlightenment? This is where I'm going to be discussing what enlightenment is and helping you to understand this mental state that the mind is working towards as part of your journey on the path to enlightenment. Of course, meditation is part of that, but there's many other facets that you need, other tools and techniques and teachings that you're going to need in order to make your way to enlightenment. So loving kindness meditation is part of that, but there's other pieces as well. It's not just meditation alone. So I'd like to welcome all of you to our class today, whether you're joining for the first time or you're joining regularly, and at the same time invite you to join for our meditation. I'm going to start off with some chanting to ease us into the meditation, which you guys are welcome to join along in if you like. If you're joining online and you haven't learned these chants yet, you can see them by going to our website, buddhadailywisdom.com, and from there you can click on the link that says free books, and down towards the bottom, about the last third of the page, you're going to see the chanting sheet, and that's what I chant each time. And then about 2 weeks from now, I'm going to be starting a 4-part series on helping you guys to develop a chanting practice. But if you'd like to at least see the chants, you'll be able to see them. And then after the chanting, I'm going to guide you in a breathing mindfulness meditation session, just a short little session for maybe 3 to 5 minutes, just to kind of prep the mind for the loving kindness. Then I'm going to be saying these affirmations where I will say on the out breath, may I be peaceful. May I be safe. May I be well. May I be free of discontentedness and the suffering that it causes. So when you hear these phrases, what you would like to do is you'd like to be able to repeat them in the mind on your out breath. And then we're going to ultimately make these various rings, getting to the point where we cover all beings. And then at that point, we'll go back to the breathing mindfulness meditation and then back to the chanting. I kind of think of it like a loving kindness sandwich where you've got loving kindness in the middle, the lettuce and tomatoes, the breathing mindfulness meditation, and then the bread holding it all together, that's the chanting. So if you'd like to take a position, either seated, lying, or standing, these are the 3 positions that work really well with loving kindness meditation. There is a walking meditation, but we don't tend to do the loving kindness meditation in the walking position. So as I mentioned, I'll start off with some chanting, and you guys are welcome to join along if you'd like. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Bhutang Bhagavanhang Abhivateyami Savakato Bhagavata Tammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Bhagavato Sāvaka Saṅkho Saṅghang Namami Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato สัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมะภะคะวะอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารนังสัมมุโนสกขาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาดามาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสนังพุทโธภาควาติ Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathe in naturally through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that the mind moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. Then I'll be back with more guidance on loving kindness meditation. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. Continuing to breathe in through the nose and out through the nose. Repeat these affirmations in the mind on the out breath. May I be peaceful. May I be safe. May I be well. May I be free of all discontentedness in the suffering that it causes. May Mom and Dad be peaceful. May they be safe. May they be well. May they be free of all discontentedness in the suffering that it causes. May my family, friends, co-workers, and neighbors all be peaceful. May they be safe. May they be well. May they be free of all discontentedness in the suffering that it causes. May all those who have caused me harm be peaceful. May they be safe. May they be well. May they be free of all discontentedness in the suffering that it causes. May all those who I have harmed be peaceful. May they be safe. May they be well. May they be free of all discontentedness in the suffering that it causes. May all beings, wherever they reside, be peaceful. May they be safe. May they be well. May they be free of all discontentedness in the suffering that it causes. Now go back to breathing mindfulness meditation, focusing on the breath. cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. Breathing in and out. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakeva Photang Mahakavanhang Abhivateyami Savakato Mahakavata Tammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakavato Savaka Sangho Sanghang Namami Namo สัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมะภะคะวะอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารนังสัมมุโนสกขาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาดามาสติสตาตาวามานุสนังพุทโธภาควาติ Okay, if you guys would like to make your way out of meditation. Once again, welcome to all of you. Welcome to our class today. As I mentioned, today is all about helping you build up your loving kindness meditation practice. It's part 3 of a 4-part series where I'm helping students to gradually build up their practice through doing meditation with you and then opening up to any and all questions that you guys have. Whether it's related to loving kindness meditation or anything else, you guys are welcome to ask any and all questions. The very first part of this 4-part series, I actually taught you loving kindness meditation, and then we did it together. Then the second one, we did it together, and I opened up to questions, and that's what we're going to do today as well. Just see what questions you guys have. If you would like to ask a question, you can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom in the comment section, and I'll be able to see that and answer your question. And if you're in Zoom, you have the added functionality of electronically raising your hand and asking any and all questions that you like. So let me know if you guys have any questions. Okay, it looks like Leo has a question. Go ahead, sir.
Hello, David. Hello, everyone. I would like to diminish my desire for the food taste, for the pleasure of the tongue. And I would like to look with you on the different options. First, there's eat something what I don't like, right? So put my mind in the situation. And then I know that there's an option that someone else chooses the food I can eat. These are the two things I just remember. What I also realized that I'm a bit struggling about the thing with, for example, if I eat a lot of bread in Germany, and if I put a spread on the bread, I also like to put things like tomato or cucumber on the bread. So normally, I think the best thing would be that I don't put that on the bread because I like it. I like the combination. On the other hand, I think it's healthy to have some vegetables also there, eating that. So there would be maybe the solution that I eat it separately. I don't know what you think about these things.
Okay, so let's first talk about the problem, and then we'll talk about the solution so that people will understand. So the problem is that the mind has central desire, where it has certain craving, and it wants pleasure. It wants permanently agreeable contact through the sense bases. So it wants to see permanently agreeable forms. It wants to hear permanently agreeable sounds. The mind wants to smell permanently agreeable odors. The mind wants to taste certain flavors on the tongue that are permanently agreeable. It wants to have certain physical objects coming in contact with the body that are agreeable to it. And then there's certain thoughts and ideas through the mind that the mind wants these mental objects that are permanently agreeable. And then when it's getting what it wants, it gets those pleasant feelings like happiness, excitement, elation, and others. And then when it's not getting what it wants, when it has the disagreeable contact through these sense spaces, then the mind's going to be repulsed by that. And now it's going to experience the painful feelings like anger, sadness, frustration, and others. So as it relates to the tongue, in all these other sense bases, what you would like to do is something very similar. First, you would like to have a really well-developed practice of the Eightfold Path. If someone doesn't have that underway yet, you need to first develop that. And Leah, you've been studying with me for several months now, so you probably have your arms around that to a certain degree, still probably dialing it in here and there, but you at least understand it. So now you got that, right? Because you need that on board, because that's what's going to eliminate craving, desire, attachment, is practicing the Eightfold Path. All cravings, desires, attachments, not just through the tongue. So an individual needs to have the Eightfold Path well underway. They also need to have a practice of generosity. Generosity is where you're giving and sharing more than is strictly required in any given situation, such as your time, effort, energy, and resources, because this is also training your mind to let go, eliminate craving, desire, attachment. Now, once you start seeing a certain amount of progress with this, and you've got your arms around this, and you're practicing these things fairly well, you would like to look at certain things that the mind is attracted to and that it's holding on to, and you would like to look at the things that the mind's repulsed by and it's pushing away. In situations where you have something that the mind is attracted to, not just through the tongue, but all the sense bases, and it's clinging and holding on to this thing, in order to be able to train your mind to eliminate this attachment or this craving, you're going to need to distance yourself from the craving, desire, attachment for a period of time so that you can train your mind to let it go. So let's just say I was really craving chocolate and I eat a lot of chocolate. Now, what you would like to do is gradually go away from that for a period of time so that you get to the point where you haven't had a piece of chocolate for like 3 months or 6 months, and you're completely content and completely fine with that. But now, because there's no harm in eating chocolate, once you know your mind has eliminated that attachment, you would like to slowly introduce it back into your life where you're eating it once in a while, but you're not maybe eating it like you were before, where maybe it was like a chocolate bar a day, right? You're just eating lots and lots and lots of chocolate. So anything that you're attracted to, you're going to need to distance yourself from it first for an extended period of time, and all the while be working with meditation and all those other teachings to train your mind to let go. Anything that you see that you're repulsed by and that you're pushing away, you would actually like to put the mind in that situation so that it can now become desensitized to whatever it is that the mind's pushing away. This is where you're going to see those painful feelings, the anger, the hostility, the bitterness arising in those situations. So now you would like to actually put the mind in those situations. So as it relates to food, Leo, if there are certain foods, like you were talking about bread with spread and putting vegetables and stuff on that, if that's something that you're noticing that you're really attracted to and you really want to do and you enjoy it to a certain degree and you maybe even get pleasant feelings out of it, you would like to distance yourself from that for a period of time. And if you would like to still eat the vegetables, like you said, yeah, you can separate them and eat them separately. You like to distance yourself for a period of time. But after you do that for maybe 3 or 6 months and you notice that the mind's not attached to these things, then you can introduce them back in because it's just something that you enjoy, but you know that you're not attached to it, right? Then the things that you're repulsed by, any foods that you're like, no way I'm going to eat that, that's horrible. Those are the foods that you would like to start eating, and you would like to start introducing them into you being able to eat them so you're not repulsed by them. So at one time I was attracted to sweets and ice creams and cakes and all this stuff, and I went away from it for a good 6 months to a year, at least that long, before I was like, all right, well, let me introduce this back again. But then there were other things that I was repulsed by, like durian fruit. I've talked about this before. This is a fruit here in Asia that basically, in my opinion, smells like poop, and the consistency of it is like poop if you put it in your mouth. Some people absolutely adore this fruit, but other people are like, ugh. And even hotels have signs up that say like no durian fruit allowed in this hotel. They have a big fruit of the durian with a cross through it, right? So when I ate this the first time, it smelled like poop. I've never had poop in my mouth, but I think that if I did, it would be the consistency of this fruit. It tasted and felt just like poop. So I was repulsed by this for a period of time. But what I did is, rather than just continuing to put my mind in that situation, I went kind of like middle of the road. I started eating cakes with durian fruit in it, because it didn't smell like poop anymore and it didn't have the consistency of poop. So I started eating cakes that have durian fruit in it. I started associating durian fruit with this sweet little cake that they make with this durian fruit. And then after I did that for a period of time, then I started eating the actual fruit the way it was, the natural fruit. And now I don't have any kind of repulsion towards it. So you're going to need to do this with various things in your diet and the things that you're eating. And at the same time, Leo, you would also like to pay attention if there's any kind of obsessive eating or eating based in emotion, where maybe like you're sad or frustrated or angry and you turn to some food in order to get some pleasant feelings. And you would also like to be sure you're eating in moderation, where you're not having big, huge portions, but you're eating moderate meals and not such large portions, which probably isn't an issue for you in Germany, I don't know. But in places like the USA, they serve huge portions of food, and you would like to be able to eat in moderation. And as you're doing these kinds of things, reminding yourself that this food is to sustain the body. It's not to please the tongue and please the mind, because that's typically how we eat when we have sensual desire in the unenlightened state and we lack wisdom, is that we will actually eat based on emotion, or we'll eat in order to please the tongue or please the mind. And while we're talking about this, I'm going to add in something here, because we're talking really detailed about sensual desire. Is sometimes people are like, wow, like that's how detailed the teachings of the Buddha are? And the answer is yes. And the reason why is because as long as you're holding any of these cravings, desires, attachments in your mind, the mind is polluted with this sensual desire. And what you're going to notice is, in terms of the peace, the calm, the serenity, and the contentedness with joy, in terms of the concentration and the focus and the clarity that the mind has, this is as a result of eliminating your cravings, desires, attachments. We do the meditations and we do all the other things that we do on the path to enlightenment, but ultimately it's when those cravings are eliminated from the mind that the mind is like freed up. You get to this point where the mind is essentially empty of any cravings, desires, attachments. As long as it's carrying around this, it's almost like a burden that the mind is carrying around. Say there's a vegetable like carrots, and somebody just despises carrots and they just want to avoid carrots. Well, if they do that, that's their choice, but they're still carrying around the craving in their mind, and this is hindering their mind from being able to have focus and concentration and clarity, because all these different cravings that are in the mind, and here we're just talking about food, but all these different cravings, desires, attachments, the mind is just pulling in all these opposite directions, whether it's food or clothing or jewelry or money or sex or cigarettes or alcohol, or wherever the mind's pulling and craving. Brand new car, brand new house, this, that, and the other thing. The mind's just pulling in all these different directions. So you can't be focused and concentrated in the present moment. So this is why it's so important to get down to the level of elimination of sensual desire as we're talking here, because by freeing up the mind of this sensual desire, you're going to get the focus, concentration, and the clarity, and you're going to get the peace and the joy in the mind, because it's no longer pulling in all these different opposite directions.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I'm not really sure if it's because when I eat it without, for example, tomatoes, when I eat the bread, and this bread without I don't think that I'm really that I'm annoyed or something. So maybe it's too tiny and I don't see it.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe it's just, hey, I prefer to eat it with these things.
Mm-hmm.
I would.
That's where like these residual cravings, Leo, sometimes you don't see them. And that's why you need to go an extended period of time without it to see if the mind does crave it or not. Right? So like, I'll give you an example of this. Like I make spaghetti. This is one of the few things that I cook here in Thailand, because there's all this food everywhere and I don't need to go out and cook anything. So I cook spaghetti. And my son, Bailan, likes to eat this. I think you've even been here before when we've had spaghetti and you've eaten some. So he's eaten it before, and then like we might go 2 or 3 months without having made it. And he'll be like, Dad, can you make spaghetti? Can you make spaghetti? And I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll make spaghetti. And then like, I'll say, I'll bring some stuff home tomorrow. And then like, I don't bring it home. And he's like, Dad, did you bring home that stuff? Did you bring home that stuff? I can see that his mind is wanting me to make this spaghetti. And, most parents would be like, my child wants this, so let me make it for them. Yeah, that's typically what people will do. But if you're trying to help an individual get rid of craving, desire, attachment, sometimes you elongate the amount of time where now he hasn't asked me for spaghetti for many months. And I know that, hey, I can make it now and he'll enjoy it, but he's not attached to it because he hasn't, kind of pleaded with me to make this spaghetti. So your mind, maybe a week or 2 or 3, you're fine without eating that particular thing. So you'd like to go an extended period of time and see if that craving is arising in the mind at all. And then when you go that extended period of time, you will know with 100% certainty that you've stamped out that particular craving and it's obliterated from the mind. But if you don't go that extended amount of time, you won't know that.
Okay. And you have to figure out, is it a craving that comes up right now, or is it an interest, right? I think for me, it's sometimes difficult to know what is the difference about that both, but yeah.
Right, and that's why I'm sharing with you to do this, because if it's a strong craving, you'll feel your mind pulling towards it, right? But if it's just kind of like a little residual craving, you might not really notice it as well, particularly early on when your mindfulness isn't fully developed. So that's why you need to go this elongated period of time where you don't do something that you regularly do, so that way the mind has an opportunity to be able to see it. And then a way that you can also see this is, let's just say like you have purchased these things and you're planning to go home today at the end of the work day and you're going to eat this particular thing that you're planning to eat. And now let's just say you come home and someone else in your house has eaten it and you didn't know about that and you were planning to eat it. And when you go to look for it and it's not there, you need to observe the mind. Is it agitated? Is it annoyed? Is it frustrated? Or are you just completely fine and no big deal? Because if there's any kind of annoyment or frustration in there, that shows that the mind was craving it, that you were longing, yearning, you were wanting that thing. You came home, it was gone. Now you're frustrated. That's the craving. So not only can you just go elongated period of time without having eaten it and observe the mind in that situation, but also once you start purchasing it again, if something like this happens, is where either it's not in the store or the restaurant doesn't have it or somebody has eaten it where you didn't realize that they had eaten it, you need to observe the mind in those situations. And this is what's going to tell you whether or not you're attached to it or not. And you need to look at it objectively, because the ego is in there constantly trying to convince you that you're more awake and you're more enlightened than you really are. Because the longer and the more that the ego can convince you that you're enlightened, then the ego can stick around. It's like that bad tenant that it just wants to stick around and figure out a way that it can do that. So that ego is going to be in there like, no, that's not an attachment. No, we don't have to do that. Like I went a week without eating that thing. I can go back to it. It's just an interest. It's just a preference. It's not really a craving. So your mind will try to justify itself, and not just about eating, but about any number of different things. Some of the things you and I have talked about in private sessions, how your mind kind of justifies those things. And you would like to get away from that and look at it objectively, so that by going an elongated period of time, you can objectively look at the mind and determine for yourself whether it's a craving or whether it's an actual preference. And right now, since you don't know, that's all the more reason why to go this extended period of time without something.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, the next question. What fits in practicing moral conduct on a daily basis? For example, what I think that I do right action automatically, I would say. So I normally don't, it seems that I don't need to pay extra attention to right action every day or repeat it daily in my mind. While livelihood, I don't have it right now constantly, so it may be also not necessary to always reflect on that every day and on a daily basis. The only thing it seems for me, because I often when I come in contact with other people here, I need to pay attention to my right speech. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's not that you necessarily need to reflect on these things continuously. You need to build enough wisdom that when you're in a situation where you're interacting, that you have the wisdom to know what is wise and unwise. Now, you've got the Eightfold Path, which is the detailed teachings of what the Buddha teaches on right speech, right action, right livelihood, and you would like to dial that in closer and closer. But then in general, what the Buddha teaches you to do is before you do something, whether it's verbal, bodily, or mental, is reflect. Is this going to cause harm to others, to me, or to both? And if it is, then you don't do that particular thing. While you're actually doing something, you can reflect. Is this causing harm to others, to me, or both? And if so, you refrain from doing that. You stop doing that thing. Even if you're like mid-sentence and you're noticing you're starting to be bitter and harsh and hostile, you restrain the mind and pull it back. And even just walk away if you need to, go calm down. And then he says, after you've done something, reflect on it and see whether you've caused harm to others, to yourself, or to both. And if so, you should avoid doing that in the future. So these are ways for you to cultivate wisdom of what is wise and unwise through the Eightfold Path, and then through your actual practice, and then getting to the point where you have discipline of the mind and you can control the mind and you can pull it back in a situation where you're putting out unwise moral conduct. Because as long as you keep putting out unwise moral conduct, all that's just going to come back to you. And the way that I think about it is like if a pipe had bursted and there's oil spewing all over the place, you would like to shut down the pipe as soon as possible. So if you can shut down your unwise moral conduct as soon as possible, then this is less and less unwholesome karma that you're going to have to deal with later. So shutting that down is wise. So it's good that you're paying attention to that. But I can't tell you whether you should stop paying attention to right action or right livelihood or things like this, because this is your practice. You know for yourself. What I'm sharing with you is you need to get to the point where you're practicing right speech, right action, and right livelihood flawlessly without even any effort, that you can just easily practice all three of those factors along with all the others to the point where it's just the way you operate. There's no other way for you to operate but through that. So this is where you're going to need to pay attention to your individual practice and decide for yourself at what point in time do you need to be focused on any particular aspect of the path.
Okay, so what action would be physically harming someone, like if I punch someone or if I whatever, right, push them, or and to their material objects also, right, wrong action. If I destroy something, a toy from someone or something like that, would be also wrong action.
Yeah.
Is there something more?
Anytime you're using the body in order to cause harm to another being, causing harm to them physically, their material possessions, this would be harm. And the Buddha gives you those three, of course, about killing, stealing, and sexual misconduct. But even when you're walking through the airplane, you need to be sure you're not running over people's feet and you're not bumping into people and stuff like this. So right action tends to become pretty straightforward for most people because, you're already practicing that to a certain degree. So you'd like to just be sure that you're not causing any harm through your bodily actions.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
There's a whole list of things that could be wrong action, but nobody can give you that list because it's so exhaustive that you can't literally list out every single thing. That's where your wisdom needs to come in. Your higher consciousness needs to look at any particular situation that you're interacting in and just being sure that you're not causing harm with the body.
Or could you maybe give some examples?
You said some, like punching someone in the face, okay, or stepping on someone's foot, or bumping into somebody. And of course, you're going to do some of these things time to time. Probably not punch somebody, but you might step on somebody's foot, or you might bump into somebody with your shoulder when you're walking down the street. And in that moment, you've created some unwholesome karma. Even though you were just walking down the street, you've created some unwholesome karma. So now what you do to clean that up is you say, oh, ma'am, I'm so sorry. I apologize. Are you okay? Or whatever you say, right? And now you clean that up, right? So in that situation where you've bumped into somebody, you just apologize. And that's what's going to make sure you're not producing unwholesome karma. Whereas if you just plowed through a crowd, bumping into everybody and anybody, you're producing all kinds of unwholesome karma. Next thing you know, someone's going to punch you in the face.
Yeah. And destroying a toy and something like that would be not right action, right? Wrong action, I mean, because it's not, I'm not physically, I don't push him, I don't touch this person, I just destroy something from him.
Right, that's a
That would
bodily
be,
action. If you went to someone's house and broke their window, that's wrong action. And that's going to produce unwholesome karma because you've now harmed somebody's material possessions. And that's where, if you have done this, you might knock, 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 knock. Excuse me, sir. Excuse me, ma'am. I've accidentally broke your window. I'm so sorry. I apologize. I would like to make amends with this. I would like to fix this however we can. Like you're going to clean that up, and that's what you would like to be able to do in those situations.
okay, perfect. Yeah, thank you. I have two more questions I would like to ask.
Okay.
Yep. First, I remember these moments in the past when I was like fascinated about the nature, about animals and simple objects around me. So fascinated about life. Is it good to develop this interest and fascination to the things around me again? And what you think about marveling at the beauty of nature in the world and so on? Of course, there should be no cravings involved, but I remember that I had this in some years ago. That I was going out in the nature and I saw these animals and I was looking at them and was really surprised, or really like, wow, this is so interesting. These many things you see on them and so on. So yeah, what are your thoughts about that?
It's a matter of appreciating the beauty of nature versus being obsessed by it. If an individual is obsessed by it, then this is where the mind's craving, desire, attachment is. So you can appreciate the beauty of nature and enjoy, the natural beauty of the world, but you would like to be sure you're not obsessed by it.
Okay, good. Yeah. Then I also sometimes, not often enough, I think, but or not so often, but sometimes I tried the sexual craving meditation with the picture, for example. And I just not curious. I'm curious if this is really. It seems for me that it's not really helping because I can understand that without the skin, of course, I wouldn't be interested in having sex with someone, right? But in the fact is that I see the skin, and this makes me attractive to a person, maybe. So yeah, I don't see how this can lead to the elimination, the photo, or also the images of the different parts of the body.
Okay, so sexual craving is one of the strongest cravings that a lot of people tend to have. It's not going to be eliminated in the very, very short time that you've been using this meditation. There's a whole month after month, year after year that you're going to need to work on this, particularly at your age, at 27 years old. You're going to have a really strong craving for sexual contact. So you shouldn't expect that you're going to see immediate results even within a few months. This is, I can speak personally, it took me multiple years to eliminate this craving. So it's very strong, it's very stubborn, and it's going to take a lot of time. So you need to be dedicated to it. And this is where your confidence in the Buddha, the teachings, the community, your teacher, and your own ability to get to enlightenment needs to come in. Because if somebody can share with you that has eliminated their sexual craving, this is what did it, then you're going to need to build confidence in that and understand that it's going to be a slow process. It's not going to be very quick or very easy.
Okay, yeah, thank you, David.
Mm-hmm. You're welcome. Okay, it looks like Paul has a question. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, hi, David. Regarding, so you've got the, I slipped my now what it's called when we're doing the affirmations. Loving kindness, yeah. When doing the loving kindness meditation, you're saying you should repeat those affirmations on the out breath. What should you be doing during the in-breath?
Just focusing on the breath, breathing in, focusing on the breath, and now you're prepared to say the next affirmation, and then you say that next affirmation.
So you're doing the, I mean, it's kind of detailed, but when you're breathing in, you're continuing the mindful breathing, and when you're breathing out, you're saying the affirmations, and the affirmation that's very, very long. You have to say it real fast in your mind, or else you're going to be saying it during your in-breath. And
this is where it comes to slowing down your breath, like we talked about recently. If you slow down your breath, you can see that even on one out breath, you can say that whole affirmation. So if I take a deep breath, may I be free of all discontentedness in the suffering that it causes. I've still got air, right? And I actually spoke, so there was air coming out as I was speaking. Whereas if I would just have my mouth closed and I was doing it internally within the mind, I'd have plenty of opportunity to say that whole affirmation in one breath. So this is where you're going to need to slow down your breath, like we talked about this week. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's why it's coming up, is that I'm still needing to get a handle on my breathing, because I think I'm still I'm still too shallow in my breath. I need to elongate it. But again, it's the dilemma of doing that without, like you say, not controlling the breath. How do you extend the breath without controlling the breath is the trick. That's a little hard for me right now.
Yeah, you're going to need to train it in order to get to the point where it is natural, right? So what I'm describing in the meditation is the ultimate goal, a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath where you're not controlling it. It's just a nice, gradual. So I'm describing the ultimate goal. But on your way there, you're going to need to do some breath control, some breath exercises in order to train the body and train the mind to get to that point. So you're going to feel like you are controlling your breath until you're not, until you get to that point where you're no longer doing that, because you've trained this body and you've trained this mind to now breathe that way naturally all the time.
And like you said, eventually you'll have pauses between in and out. You don't. I shouldn't try to do that in my training. I should just try to keep it natural and try to make it as effortless and as possible, but not intentionally try to put a pause in between.
Exactly.
That'll come naturally.
Exactly. So you're going to need to get over that first hump of just slowing down the breath. And now when you get that nice and gradual, nice and slow, then eventually you're going to start feeling more and more comfortable, and you're going to notice that the mind settles in, the body settles in, and there's going to be this gap in between that you can just kind of focus on that stillness of the gap between your inhale and exhale. Not that everybody's going to breathe the exact same time frame, but just to give you an idea, I've timed this before, and my inhale is about 15 to 20 seconds typically. That's kind of like normal, and the same thing with the exhale. And then there's a few second gap in between. So like a whole breath cycle could be, upwards of 45 seconds, just one inhale and one exhale. And again, not everybody's going to have that same amount of time. You shouldn't use that as like a litmus test or anything like that, but it just shows you kind of the rate at which breathing, because the volume that each person breathes is going to be different. But if you can get that rate where it's that nice, slow, steady breath, and when I'm using the microphone at the temple, I can breathe into it and people can hear it, where you and I tried this microphone the other day and you couldn't hear it. So there are recordings where I've breathed into the microphone. I just don't know what they are off the top of my head. But occasionally when I'm teaching at the temple and people ask these kinds of questions, I will breathe into the microphone so that people can hear it. But just slow your breath down and do those exercises we talked about where you just get used to just breathing in and out. And you're not trying to do anything particular with the mind. You're just focused on the body, getting comfortable breathing in and out. And if you need to use your hands in order to help you in motion for the breath, as you're kind of training your mind and you're training the breath, you can do that to get started, right? To just kind of like that visual kind of helps you to be able to slowly exhale and slowly inhale.
Other thing is when meditating, I notice I'll often, I probably link to thoughts, which I have too many of. Like I say, if I'm 10% focused on the breath, I'm lucky. But with those thoughts, of course, comes, tension, stress. Should I be actively, sort of monitoring and then releasing that tension as it comes up? As I find my muscles tense, I should notice and then release that. Like, should that be an intentional thing, or should not focus on that at all because it's distracting? Or
At this point, I would suggest you build like brick by brick, just like you're building a foundation, is get your breath going well first. Get that taken care of. And once you've got that going, yes, you will need to be able to notice that the body is having tension and it's actually inside the mind, and you can physically kind of internally within the mind kind of like tweak it, and then like you can let go and you'll feel it drop out of the body because you've let go inside the mind. But you've got to get that breath, where it needs to be first so that you can get comfortable with that and just build it up piece by piece.
is it what I've been doing? I told you, and is it okay to continue? Is to go to your podcast where I started and use those podcasts, that section of the podcast where you're teaching us how to meditate, mindful breath meditation. Use that where you chant at the beginning, and then you walk us, you talk us through how to, like you're doing, like you did today.
Mm-hmm.
But rather than have to wait for a Wednesday meeting, in the meantime, just using the podcast or will I get too dependent on that? Like I should start not using that and just doing it on my own at this point.
If you're comfortable doing it on your own, do it on your own. But if you feel like you need the guidance, go ahead and use it. I've heard some students use it upwards of 3 months as they're getting their practice going. And then eventually you're going to need to phase that out. But if that's what you need in order to really get going, then use it, right? Like that's where each individual person is their own independent practitioner. You've got to see what's working best for you. And if you're trying on your own and it's just not coming together for you, and it helps you to have this crutch or this training wheels, hey, use it. But just understand that you're going to need to eventually let that go. So sometimes, it's better to just drag through it, like in order to just do it without getting attached to this guided meditation. And other times it's like, no, I've got to use this or else it's just not going to happen. So let me use this. And yes, I know the mind's going to get fixated on it and I got to let that go later, but it's just not going to be a good start if I don't start somewhere. So some people, will come out of the gate, doing it on their own, starting with me, in classes and stuff like that, and then very easily be able to transition to do it on their own. Other students, they'll learn with me, but then they're going to need that few months worth of listening to the guidance in order to really get going. And that can really help somebody that has an overactive mind like you. Like you've said that you have an overactive mind. And also the walking meditation. There's videos in YouTube where I've taught walking meditation. This is very good for an overactive mind.
Okay. I haven't even thought of that, but I guess that's in the future, walking meditation. I assume you're doing this with your eyes open.
Yeah, you're doing it with your eyes open, and I've recorded it a few times. So if I was you, I would go look at that, because that might be exactly what you need. Because whenever my mind was overactive, I would oftentimes just go do walking as a standalone, or sometimes I would do walking first and then switch to a sitting, and it would make my seated position that much better. Or sometimes I would sit down to meditate, in 3 minutes I would just be bombarded with these thoughts, and I would just get up and go walk and do the walking meditation. And then sometimes I would come back and sometimes
That's
I wouldn't.
I've yet to try. So I'll look for that in one of your future podcasts.
It's on the YouTube channel. You're going to need to go to the YouTube channel and search for walking meditation, because it's a visual. I haven't ever put it on the podcast because it's a visual thing that you need to see how I'm doing it.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
And the mindful meditation, I think you spoke before about you're not doing that every day. You're doing that like, every few days or once a week or something. It's not like you don't do that every meditation. You do that occasionally.
The breathing mindfulness meditation?
Sorry, did I say I meant the loving kindness is what I meant to say. The loving kindness is something you do occasionally, like every few days or once a week or something. It's not something you do every meditation.
So out of your 2 or 3 sessions per day for 30 minutes or more, you would like at least one of them every day to be loving kindness. And if you use the morning session, this works out really, really well, because then it sets up your day with loving kindness in your mind. And because where the real transformation is happening is not just in the meditation, it's happening in your day-to-day life when you're being loving and kind with the people around you. So if you can kind of fill up your mind each morning with loving kindness through your loving kindness meditation, then you can be practicing loving kindness through your intention, speech, and actions each day. But that's not to say you couldn't do it at 4 p.m. or 6 p.m. You surely could. But what you'll notice is that if you have your morning meditation be loving kindness, and maybe your other 2 breathing mindfulness, that's ideal way for most people to set up their sessions. But then, like, let's just say something happens at 4 p.m. and you get really angry and you get really frustrated. Hey, even though you did loving kindness in the morning, do it in the evening as well. You're not interested in allowing the mind to stay wired with that anger. So as soon as you notice that the anger and frustration and irritation is coming in, you'd like to break that up and get rid of it. So the loving kindness meditation is what's going to break that up, so your mind doesn't keep staying wired with that anger.
Okay, good. That answers my questions. Thanks, David.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, it looks like we have a question coming in from Fiona. Hi, teacher. I noticed that the mind is wanting to avoid socializing with people I don't know very well in order to avoid wrong speech, frivolous speech. I recently was in a social situation which I found uncomfortable because I found it difficult to make conversation. Shyness is also an issue. What would you advise? Thank you. So the shyness is coming from personal existence view, typically, where the mind is wanting to be perceived by others in a certain way. And when the mind's not being perceived that way, then it feels those painful feelings. So what the mind thinks is the best solution when it's in a public social situation is it thinks that if I push this situation away and I don't do this, I don't conversate with people, that this is going to solve my problem. But then the mind just stays shy. So this is one of those situations where the mind's repulsed by it. It's pushing it away. So you would actually like to put the mind in that situation where you are socializing with people, so that way you'll be able to get over that shyness and get over that personal existence view. It's wise that you're paying attention to your right speech and making sure that you're not using wrong speech. But ultimately, the way that you're going to get really good at practicing right speech is by practicing it regularly. So you're going to need to put the mind in those situations where you're having little conversations here and there, and you get more and more comfortable with that, so you can come out of your shell. And by the way, Fiona, if you haven't already, Volume 1, Chapter 16, since you've been studying for a little while, Volume 1, Chapter 16 is all about personal existence view and the ego. And there's some proactive things that you can be doing there to proactively train the mind to eliminate personal existence view, so that when you're in those situations where personal existence view is getting triggered, it'll be reduced, or it may be even non-existent if you're doing those proactive training to eliminate the personal existence view. Okay. I'm not seeing any other questions anywhere. Okay, so what I'll do then is just end by thanking all of you guys for joining. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for your interest in learning and growing on the path to enlightenment. As you guys would like to learn more, you're more than welcome to attend this Sunday. As I mentioned, I'm going to be in Chapter 3 of our book, Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment. This is titled Enlightenment. What is Enlightenment? Because we just recently restarted this program and now headed towards this goal of enlightenment. You need to first know what it is so that you can more easily navigate your way to it. So that's why it's really close up front at the beginning of the book series in the book, so that you can know right up front what is enlightenment, so you'll be able to more easily navigate your way to it. And then next Wednesday, we'll be on the fourth part of our 4-part series on loving kindness meditation. So I'll do the same thing with loving kindness meditation first, and then I'll open up to any and all questions that you'd like to ask. And then 2 weeks from now, we're going to start a 4-part series on Buddhist chanting, so that you can learn about these chants, where the history of them are, where they come from, how they're going to benefit your mind, and how to actually practice them. So thank you all for joining, and perhaps we'll see you guys in a future class. Be well and take care. Sawadee ka.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. To provide support for this podcast, visit patreon.com/support Buddha. To access more teachings, visit buddhadailywisdom.com. There, you will discover a full range of courses, retreats, and online resources to assist you on the path to enlightenment. Remember to establish a daily, consistent meditation practice, along with learning and practicing these teachings. A well-developed meditation practice is the foundation in which to train the mind to attain enlightenment.